I'm Paul McGuire, and we're going to analyze what's going to happen in 2014, which I believe is perhaps the most critical year in America's history. Now, I don't say that for the purpose of sensationalism, but I say it for the reason of what I call acceleration and convergence. And what I mean by that is that there are a convergence, a very unique convergence of factors that are happening in our nation. And as America goes, by the way, so goes the world. And these factors that are converging are unparalleled in human history and unparalleled in the history of the United States of America. Some of the factors that are converging, and not only are they converging, I use the term acceleration. So we have a convergence and we have an acceleration of events. Here are some of the events that are both converging and accelerating. Number one, economic. America is replicating to one degree or another what happened in the Weimar Republic before Adolf Hitler took over in Nazi Germany. And that was, they did what many governments do when they are in economic trouble. They begin to print money from nothing, which creates hyperinflation. Now, the Federal Reserve calls this quantitative easing. But quantitative easing is just a fancy word for printing money from nothing. And the reason that is done is it's like heroin. It artificially pumps up the economy by flooding the economy with dollars. And it creates the illusion of prosperity. The problem is the dollars, the currency, the dollar, is no longer anchored to anything of value. So it's kind of a hocus pocus game. You print money, you have lots of dollars circulating, but the other nations in the world, like China, which has refused our dollars, and quite a few nations recognize that the dollar is no longer backed by a tangible asset such as gold or silver. It's backed by really nothing but a promissory note of the Federal Reserve System, which was created in 1913 and 1914. Now that's a convergence of something that's going to happen, and it's going to have it already is having a devastating impact on our economy. In the short term, it devalues the dollar, which has a short-term benefit in that it makes American goods and services cheaper. It also brings in tourism, but that's a short-term benefit. Up until recently, America has been the de facto world's currency. So all the nations of the world would invest in the dollar. They would trade oil for dollars. And this created prosperity for America. Now, what's happening now is that America, like all the nations in Europe, most notably Greece and nations like that, but all the other European Union nations and nations like Australia and in South America and in China, and in fact, the vast majority of the nations all around the world are in the same crisis that America's in. Their money is devalued. They find themselves, governments, obligated to pay pensions, to finance wars, to pay for retirement, to pay for health care, to pay for all these goods and services that they've promised the people in what we would call a socialist economy, because in the socialist economy the government promises to take care of the people, but they don't have enough money because they've crushed true economic growth. And that's what's happening in America. We have the outsourcing of all the good jobs, or the majority of the good jobs, or many of the good jobs have been outsourced to other nations. Why? Because the other nations can provide engineers or manufacturing plants, such as the case in China, at a far lower cost. So the heads of American corporations are really not loyal to America. They claim to be capitalists. Many of them claim to be Republicans, but their loyalty really is to their God, which is the almighty dollar. And they are only interested in short-term gains because they have an annual stock report, and their remuneration and their bonuses and everything is tied into that annual performance. So they're always looking at something in the increment of a year. And if all hell breaks loose in the following years, it really doesn't matter to them. I mean, it should, but it doesn't. So what has happened in America, and Pat Buchanan wrote an excellent article on this when he was talking about immigration. And I want to make it very clear that I don't believe that God is the God of the white man or the Northern European. I mean, I'm not apologizing for my own racial ancestry, but it must be understood that God does not have a favorite race. And so in the mind of God, the infinite personal living God of the universe, he has a plan for all races, and that would include what could be called the black race or the African American race, the Hispanic people or the Latino people, the Asian people, the European people, the Middle Eastern people, and so on and so forth. God has a plan for each ethnic group. He doesn't have a favorite. Now, why that is very important to grasp in its totality is because it implies that mankind's origins are not the result of random selection or evolutionary chance of a random mixture of chemicals or proteins or whatever that randomly evolved over 25 million, 250 million years, and through a process of what Darwin called natural selection, where the fittest survive, mankind was born. But it's absolutely critical to understand the subtext beneath evolutionary theory, because the subtext, the message behind the theory is, to anybody who even has a modicum of intelligence, is that Darwinian theory implies very implicitly that certain races are superior to other races. And in fact, they have the world's elite, the scientific elite that have assumed control over our world, which is something they borrowed from Atlantis, a pre-flood civilization, which I happen to believe actually existed. The philosopher Plato, in his writings called The New Republic, he talked a great deal about Atlantis, and he borrowed the Atlantean idea of 10 god kings. Now notice the word god kings, because we're going to get into what that means. They were genetic DNA god kings. Now, these 10 god kings would compose an elite because they were superior, a scientific elite, it was called later on, by the Fabian socialists like H.G. Wells and Aldous and Julian Huxley and Bertrand Russell and others. And the world's elite today is modeling their control, their pyramid control, based on the ideas of Plato's New Republic, where an elite, a scientific elite, which is superior, rules the masses. That's why you see on the back of the US dollar a spiritual symbol and a spiritual organizational hierarchy in the form of an Illuminati pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Horus or Lucifer towards the top of it. And then, in case there's any ambiguity as to what the symbolism on the back, the hardcore spiritual symbolism on the back of the US dollar actually means, at the base of the pyramid we read the words in Latin, Novus Order Seclorum, which means new order of the ages or new world order. And the new world order is a new paradigm shift for mankind, that we're in the process of a hyper-acceleration into the New World Order. The New World Order has already begun, and it's accelerating. And it's a total reorganization of planet Earth, because it essentially establishes a hierarchy, like an organizational flowchart, where the scientific elite rules the masses because they are genetically superior and genetically more intelligent. And that's the part that they hide from you. Now, in this Darwinian evolutionary theory, by the way, they said quite openly, the architects of the New World Order, they said, I'm not saying, but based on evolutionary theory, they believe the fittest survive. So the species that's the most intelligent has the right to rule over inferior species. And this is what they say, although they hide it from the masses.